Good morning. Thank you for taking the time to join us for Vandis's Tech in 20 demo with our partner Alkira. At today's demo, David Klebanov, Director of Partner Solutions Architecture and Tech Evangelist at Alkira, will show how enterprises can accelerate their cloud adoption by making the network move at the speed of the cloud. He is joined by Ryan Young, Vandis's Chief Technology Officer. Before we get started, I'd like to remind everyone that this demo is being recorded. If you have any questions during the demo, please type them in the chat window and we'll either address them as we go or at the end of the session. And lastly, a quick reminder to visit our website, vandis.com/events, for a list of other upcoming events that you might be interested in. For those who are new to Vandis, we provide managed services and IT solutions to optimize the security and performance of network infrastructures, both on-premise and in the cloud. We design IT solutions to meet each organization's unique needs and goals. For 40 years, from mid-market to enterprise clients, Vandis has delivered comprehensive strategies for secure IT infrastructures. We've partnered with Alkira because as more organizations leverage a multi-cloud strategy to optimize costs and performance, this also comes with new networking and security challenges. Alkira's cloud networking as a service will help our clients secure, scale, and simplify management of their hybrid and multi-cloud environments. And now it's my pleasure to turn it over to David.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Joanne, Ryan. Thank you for having me here. And welcome everybody to this demonstration of Alkira Cloud Network as a Service solution. So today we are going to actually configure a network with these characteristics, right? I'm going to show this for just a minute or so, and then I'm going to dive right into actually, building the network. So first of all, we are going to establish this what we call an Alkira cloud backbone that is going to interconnect two global regions, right? One in US West region, another one in Southeast Asia region, in Oregon and Singapore, respectively. Right, that is going to establish the global communication between two different portions of the network. We are going to add cloud workloads from different applications. We're going to place them in different network segments to prevent communication that is unwanted. And that is going to establish our multi-cloud networking because we're going to use AWS and Azure. Right? We are going to provide internet connectivity for those applications. We are going to insert a remote site into this configuration, and eventually we are going to put the cloud firewalls, the next generation cloud firewalls, to provide the security controls for this environment. So in a matter of minutes, we're going to build this global network with that stretches across multiple clouds, multiple regions, on-premise locations with inserted security. All right. So now let's get to actually building our network together. So this is the Alkira portal, right? Alkira Cloud Network as a Service is a SaaS-like solution where you get to basically onboard it into the cloud platform that Alkira operates, and in that platform, the enterprises, the organizations build their cloud, multi-cloud, and hybrid cloud networking. So what you're seeing here is a login screen into the platform. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to log in into the system, and then I'm taken into what we call a design canvas when I start designing my global network. Right. So the first step that we talked about in designing the network is establishing the global footprint of our network. Now we talked about establishing the network across two different regions in US and Asia Pacific. And as you can see in here, there is a US West region that was added into the network, and there is an Asia Pacific Southeast region that was added into the network. They are interconnected through the cloud backbone. Alkira's Cloud Network as a Service platform operates in every publicly available cloud regions. So for enterprises who are trying to build this global network, the process of creating this network is actually done in a matter of minutes by simply going into the map of the currently available Alkira Cloud Exchange points, and then selecting the cloud exchange point that you would like to have your network present in. Right? Today we operate in over 30 different cloud regions, and we keep on expanding our footprint as our customers' demands grow. Right. So this is how I was able to establish by simply check marking on these two regions and saving my selection. And that's what you can see in here is the network has been established. Okay, so now we have a global network in place with communication between two different regions, and it took us only a few minutes to just click through the screen and establish that. Now let's go into one of the regions and start designing how our network looks inside this region. So we'll start off with US West, right? As you can see, when I hover on top of it, it says it's empty here because there's really nothing in there. And if I click, you can really see just an empty canvas of an Alkira presence in that region. And again, we call this an Alkira Cloud exchange point. So you can think about that as a point of presence where you do all of your advanced routing and service insertion and policies in that particular cloud region. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add some cloud applications into this. So as you can see on the right-hand side, it says cloud connectors, right? So I'm going to add a new cloud connector. Alkira supports onboarding 4 different types of cloud connectors. So we can onboard AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, and Oracle Cloud workloads, plus provide internet access to consume internet applications and SaaS applications. So we're going to add an AWS connector, right? So now we need to have access into the cloud account where the cloud team has provisioned the cloud workloads. So we select an authentication profile that I've created ahead of time in here, and select which one of the regions I would like to discover, and then let the system go and discover the cloud workloads that are deployed in that particular region. Okay, these are all the cloud workloads that we have in that region. I'm going to select one of them and add that into the network. Now I need to provide just the basic characteristics of how that connectivity is going to look like. So the first one, I need to select what size of connectivity I want from networking standpoint, and we support all the way from 100 megabits per second all the way to 20 gigabits per second. And it really depends on the requirements for the connectivity for that particular workload. So in this demo case, I'm just going to stick to the smallest one. So 100 meg. Now, which segment this is going to reside in? So there are no segments defined. So let's define a new segment. And if you recall, we said that we are going to define basically finance and HR applications. So I'm going to do a finance segment. I need to provide an IP range for internal use of that segment, and then save the changes. Now the new segment was created. Now I'm going to select the segment in here. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to assign what we call a group, which is a grouping inside the segment. We also call this micro segmentation. So I'm going to call this Finance App 1. So this is the first application in my finance segment. And now I'm going to select Finance App 1. And the last thing I'm going to do in here is that I'm going to select what we call a billing tag, which means that allows the enterprise IT to perform viewback or chargeback for the expenses incurred for these particular sort of resources. So this is the finance billing tag, and I'm going to select it finance, right? So the last step I'm going to make before I save the configuration is that I can actually go as a networking person operating this environment. I can go and I can edit the routing settings of the cloud workload itself, and just make sure that all the traffic is sent to the Alkira Cloud exchange point. At this moment, my setup is complete. So basically, you can see that in a matter of minutes, I'm able to add the cloud workload into my network without acquiring any expertise of how this is done in AWS, right? So there's a high degree of automation that is built into the system, and that allows these workloads to be connected into the global network in minutes. And as you can see, this is a very transformative way of treating cloud networking, where the networking team can now have a very different sort of type of dialogue with the cloud team and achieve a very different level of agility of how fast you can connect things into the network. right? So we have this workload connected here. Now, we also, if we place this in a finance segment, you can see here the finance is represented. Now, we also talked that we are going to have an HR application in a different region. So let me switch regions here, and I'm going to go into the Asia Pacific Southeast. As you can see, there is nothing in here. I haven't added anything. So now I'm going to add a new cloud workload. This time we're going to do Azure connector. So my HR application is going to be residing in Azure. Again, I have authentication profile created for the that particular Azure environment. I'm going to pull the workloads. I'm going to select one of the workloads I want to attach. And again, similarly to what you've seen for AWS, I need to provide a couple of pieces in here, which is my sizing segment. I have finance, but now I want to create a new segment, which I'm going to call HR, right? And again, provide the IP address range for internal use of that segment, save the segment. Now I can select the segment as HR. Now, find groups. You can see we created a finance application for finance, finance application, one group for finance. Now I'm going to create an HR application group for my HR applications. Now I can save that, and again view back and charge back for this particular resource. So the cost for that can be attributed to HR. So billing tag HR. And now you see that the same set of parameters that I had to provide for AWS, I'm providing for Azure. There is nowhere in here that I have to understand how Azure networking works. So just like full abstraction of AWS networking, there's a full abstraction of Azure networking. And when I do and I save it, now you will see that that particular Azure workload was added into the environment, and it has connectivity into the network. Here you can see that it was added here as an HR application. Now I have two segments in my network, HR and finance. These segments are completely isolated. So HR application in Singapore cannot talk to finance application in US West in Oregon. Right. So very simple way to create this global network, multi-cloud network, AWS and Azure, and also insert the level of segmentation in order to make sure that these applications remain isolated from each other. Okay, let me go back to US West, where we had the AWS. The next thing I want to provide for this application is internet access. Because as developers are working on this application here, on a finance application, they may need access to internet in order to perform, operating system upgrades or pull some code from the repository. So what I can do is I can quickly go here and say that I want to provide internet access from this particular region, and I'm going to call this internet US West. And again, I need to define which segment the internet is in. We're trying to provide this for finance applications. So I'm going to create finance. What group? So let me create a new group in here and call this internet. Save the changes. Billing tag, because I'm going to be providing this service to the finance organization. I'm going to select finance as my billing tag, so finance can be charged back if I desire to do so for the sort of cost incurred with this internet connection. I'm going to go and save it, and as you can see now, I have internet that was added. So now I have this finance application that was connected into the network. And now I have internet that this finance application can access should they want to do so, right? Now I can do the same thing for the application, for the HR application in Southeast Asia by just quickly repeating this process and just saying that this is an internet connector for AP Southeast, and then say what segment is it in. This time it's an HR segment. What group it's in. I already had the group created for internet. Billing tag is going to be HR, and I'm going to save it. And now you can see that now my HR application in Southeast Asia and Singapore has access to internet, right? So as you can see, I keep on building my environment. I have my multi-cloud network done. I have my segmentation done. I have my internet access done. So the next thing we're going to move is back into my US West region in here and say, okay, this was all about the cloud, and hold on the thought about security, because I know the first thing that comes to mind is that I've added internet. So what happens about it sort of with security related things, right? So hold off that thought. We're going to be adding security soon. But so, you know, by default, when you're adding internet, by default, we are creating sort of an implicit rule that blocks internet communication, because we understand that once you added internet, we want to make sure that there's a proper level of control applied to that. So by default, the communication to internet is blocked. And we are going to create a policy that is going to allow that communication to occur through the firewall in just a few minutes. But before that, I just want to finish the networking setup. So we have our cloud workloads, we have our internet access. Now let's add, on the other side of the topology, you can see users and sites, where I can add my physical network into my cloud network. So in this particular case, we were talking about adding a remote site. So what I'm going to do in here, there's a variety of ways that you can connect it to the Alkira environment from on-premises. So you can do IPsec connections, you can do SD-WAN connections, you can do direct connect and express route from your data centers. So there's a variety of ways you can connect into that cloud network from your existing environment. So I'm going to choose IPsec for simplicity, but if I were adding something like a data center, I probably would have chosen, you know, direct connect. Although I could have used IPsec as well if that satisfies the need. So I'm going to say this is my remote site, and this remote site has a router in it, so router 1, and it has this particular sort of IP address, and I'm just going to make up an IP address in here. And everything else is basically automated by Alkira as far as IPsec configuration is concerned, even though for more advanced sort of administrators, you can customize IPsec settings in here. So there is a lot of customization that you can do and a lot of tweaking that you can do should you want to do that. So I have router 1 with this IP address. Now maybe this site is very important, so I want to add another router in here and basically call it router 2. That means this router 2 is connected to a different service provider. It's a different internet service provider, has a different connectivity. So I'm just going to basically just change an IP address in here. So it's a different router connected to a different internet circuit at that remote site, which gives that site a full redundancy as it connects to the cloud. The last thing I need to do is to know how the routing is going to be handled. So we are going to enable BGP for that, for the routing. I need to provide what's called a BGP autonomous system number for that particular site. Lastly, there's this fields in here on the bottom that you can see that look familiar from the cloud setup. And these are the same set of questions around sizing, around segment. So this site is going to be accessing my finance application and the group. So we do not have group for on-prem sites. So let's define a group for remote sites, and we're going to call this on-prem sites. Save the changes and select the group in here. At this time, the setup is complete, right? So you can see that I don't have to be a CCIE certified or CCNP certified sort of a networking person in order to be able to connect the remote site using IPsec to Alkira. We even allow you to generate a router configuration right here from the interface, where you can take that configuration and just paste it into the router at the remote site, and that router will connect to the cloud network. And when it connects to the cloud network, it's able to communicate with all the workloads, all the resources in that particular segment where it's connected. So you can see this is all about finance this particular time. So this site can now automatically communicate with my AWS workloads, and it will be able to access internet. So now I've not just built a cloud network and multi-cloud network, but I've also added my physical on-premises network into the setup, and they all can communicate with each other. All right, so that really, in a matter of 10, 15 minutes that we've been building this, we have built all the networking foundation. Like I said, again, cloud and multi-cloud across different regions with multiple segments for segregation of traffic, with internet access, with on-premises locations. All of that is done in a matter of minutes. Now let's step into security, because security is very sort of tightly connected to networking. So what happens to security? So what I want to do is I want to add firewalls into this environment. And as you can see in the middle here, we have this column called services. This is where you can insert services from the Alkira services marketplace into this environment. We support 4 different firewall vendors today, Palo Alto, Fortinet, Checkpoint, and Cisco FTD firewalls, right, that you can insert into this environment. So I'm going to use Palo Alto firewalls because that's one of the most popular firewalls. So I'm going to say this is my Palo Alto firewalls in US West. Now, how is the firewall going to be managed? So all of our deployments, the firewalls are managed by the firewall management tool. In this particular case, it's Panorama, right? So I'm going to put some bogus settings in here, but this would be coming from Panorama, right? I'll put the IP address of the Panorama server, right? And that is something that the security administrator has to provide to the network administrator to be able to link those firewalls that are going to be instantiated within the Alkira infrastructure. But the firewalls themselves, the policy of the firewalls, are going to be managed by the security team. So we have a very nice separation of responsibilities between the networking team that deploys the firewalls and the security team that controls the security policy on those firewalls. Now we're going to choose the licensing model. We support bring your own license or pay-as-you-go license for the firewalls. We're going to make some selections as far as how the firewalls are going to be deployed. There is the administrator's password. Oops, just a second. That we define for the for local access to the firewalls. There is the PIN registration that we use for making sure that this firewall is added in a proper sort of place in a support portal. Again, a bit of a bogus settings in here, just for the sake of demo, but these are all the settings that are coming from the security engineer who is going to talk to the network engineer. Auto scaling, as far as how many firewalls we want to have in the environment, we can auto scale to the higher number of firewalls in case additional sort of capacity is needed. So again, these authentication keys, I'm just going to put some bogus settings in here, but these are all coming from the security administrator. So every firewall that is added into the environment is going to be handed over to Panorama for management. Now, which segments are extended into the firewall? So in this case, let's say we do finance segment. There is multiple zones that you can define. So you can have, this is my finance zone, and then select the finance applications that are going to be sent there, right? So there's a multi-zone support that you can have in here. And let's say this is my on-prem zone. So not only are we spinning up these firewalls and making sure they're highly available and auto-scalable, but we also support the creation of multiple zones in those firewalls. Right now, we're going to save that setting, and all right. There's some error in here. Okay, maybe we should just do that. See if that goes through. Aha, okay. I think I just put the wrong keys in there. But you can see the firewall is now running inside the infrastructure. Again, I spun up the firewall in a matter of minutes. I didn't have to acquire any knowledge of how to deploy these firewalls in the cloud environment. So a very transformative conversation between the network team and the security team. And the last thing I can do is I can create the policies that actually steer the traffic to the firewall. So let me quickly do that. I'll go into the policies section on the left. I can create a new rule in the policy and say, match all, and then say the service type is going to be firewall. Save this particular rule. Then I can create a rule list and say that this is going to be the collection of these rules together. So for example, I'm going to call this a cloud rule. Oops, sorry, should have been adding things here. Cloud rule, and then I can select the individual rules inside the rule list and then save the rule list. And finally, is basically go and create a new policy to say that I want to create cloud policy in the finance segment and say that my finance applications that are talking to themselves here, apply the cloud rule, save the policy, and then you can see a new policy has been created. I just enabled the policy, and that allows the communication inside the finance application group to be sent to the Palo Alto firewall. Again, there was no need for me to design any specific routing domains or traffic steering in order to do that. Very sort of intuitive and intent-based way to do that. So I know it was quick, and we are right on time to finish this webinar or this demonstration. But as you can see, that we have successfully built this sort of a global network across clouds, across on-prem locations with integrated security, segmentation. We've created policies to send the traffic to the firewalls, and all of that was achieved with a single cloud network as a service platform from Alkira in a matter of minutes. So with that, I think we can wrap our demonstration today. And I don't know, Joanne, Ryan, if there's anything you'd like to add.
That was awesome, David. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
So I guess at this point, we'll open it up for questions. If anyone has any questions, you can either drop it in the chat or feel free to come off mute. But I just want to reiterate kind of what you saw here is taking all of the complication out of global cloud networking and using cloud networking as an enterprise WAN as well. And it does it in a really fast and seamless manner. I mean, we do this for customers all the time, and the one thing that I can tell you is the speed at which you can deploy this and interconnect your clouds, your multi-cloud environment, and your branches and data centers. I mean, it's absolutely fantastic, the speed and security in which you can deploy a full global WAN solution. So thank you, David.